Hello and welcome to the 2025 Weapons for Wellness event. My name is Iman Blow and I'm the founder of the Aspire to Inspire initiative, a former award-winning student athlete, and the producer of this experience in partnership with USA Fencing. Weapons for Wellness is a proactive mental health event created for the fencing community with the purpose of mental health awareness, community engagement, and enrichment. This particular series is about a parent's perspective. So we're going to be talking to fencing parents about how they navigate fencing from their side and how they help their athletes navigate it. Today, in this interview, we have the pleasure of speaking to Stephany McClain about her experience being a fencing parent to four fencers who now range from their late 20s to just barely being double digits. Hello, Stephany.
Hello.
Let me introduce you formally. So, Stephany would describe herself as a lifelong fencing enthusiast with over 20 years immersed in the sport. For her, fencing is not just a passion, it has shaped her life and the lives of her family. She views her son and her eldest child, Nolan, as a natural leader. He was a former captain and multiple time NCAA champion at his alma mater, Columbia University, and has recently completed a graduate program at MIT. Her oldest daughter, Lauren, embodies excellence and perseverance both on and off the strip. Currently a student at Harvard University, Lauren is also a two-time NCAA champion and Olympic medalist. Stephany is also proud to be raising two talented youth fencers, Gracie and Madison, who continue to carry forward the family's passion. She is also proudly married to Olympic coach Sean McClain, whose expertise and dedication has inspired countless athletes. Her journey as a fencing mom has been a true joy. Beyond her own deep-rooted involvement in fencing, Stephany remains actively engaged with the sport as a mentor and supporter. Fencing has taught her values of discipline, teamwork, and resilience, and she is committed to passing that legacy on to the next generation. And I guess this interview is an extension of those efforts of yours. So when I do these interviews, I always like to start with the same question. I think we've done five of these events by now. And I always like to ask the interviewees about their own introduction to mental health. So the first question is, what is your introduction to mental health? And then what is your introduction to mental hygiene? The difference, if you don't know, is mental hygiene focuses on what you do to better yourself, whereas mental health can sometimes be associated with the kind of negative experiences or the trials that people have with their mental health. So what would you say your introduction to those things have been?
My introduction is being a parent at a fencing tournament, which is a very, very high stress, tense, anxiety ridden situation. And that would be my introduction. That was my first introduction to really being very anxious and like feeling your heart palpitating from the stress of watching your child fence.
And I can imagine, especially because you no longer have any control over the situation, it's even
Right.
possibly more stressful because it's almost like an in-body but also out-of-body experience because you're not
Oh,
the
definitely.
source.
Definitely. Your body is clenched, your palms are sweaty. It's like an Eminem song. You're like, you feel like you want to throw up.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah, you get up. Sometimes you can't sit there. You have to get up, and so you're pacing. Um, it's tough. It's a tough position to find yourself in. And but you want to be there for your child, so you can't leave. So you're stuck until the bout is over.
Yeah, and I think on that note, what do you think over the years are some skills that you've used or explored to try to manage your own feelings and your own experience while supporting your athletes as they're competing?
Well, I think for me, it's the commitment. And so the more I commit to taking my child to practice, to being present at practices, not just dropping them off and coming back later, that helps to alleviate some of the stress at tournaments. Because I look at it in this way, like my child is giving it their all. And I'm a part of that. I'm witnessing this. And so when we go to the tournament, I'm pretty confident that they're going to give it their all. They're going to try their best. Because I was part of it. I was there and I see how hard that they work. And then let's not forget, practice is just a part of it. They have to go home, they have to do schoolwork, it's late at night. So when you put all those things together and the part and add yourself to the equation that you're a part of this, it helps to alleviate the stress for me.
So it's almost like you're training with them in a part of that training by being able to witness the work they're putting in and seeing your
Yes.
child at practice when it comes to the tournament, you're more prepared for what that might look like, but also you know what's going into it.
Yes, I think that's a big part of. So a lot of people tell me I don't seem stressed at the tournaments, and I think that's why. It's because I feel like I'm a part of this. I'm not just like taking them to the tournament. I'm not just like watching it happen. I've been a part of the journey. So I think that's really important. Not everybody can do that. People have, listen, it's the real world. People have to go to work, people work late, and so they're like depending on other people maybe to help them with that. But whenever you can, you should always try to go to practices and watch your child practice.
Yeah, if we can like take that but go a little further back, what was your or your child's introduction to the sport of fencing? And if there was any goal for their involvement to begin with, what was that? And did it evolve over time?
Oh boy, you know that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? That's fencing. So fencing starts out very recreational. It may be once a week, and it's fun, right? You're playing with swords, you're doing like something none of your friends are doing at school. But then the cookie is you got to go to a tournament. And then from one tournament, it's a local, but then you find yourself driving to another state. And then one day you find yourself taking a plane to another country. So the introduction for me was just like, this is something fun and this is something different because my child, Nolan, the oldest, didn't like team sports.
Hmm.
And so that was our introduction.
So you found fencing just like,
Oh, it was Star Wars. It was like, oh, this is a lot like Star Wars, and I think you're gonna like this, right? And it was fun for quite a few weekends. It was fun, but then it develops. It grows into something bigger if you stick with it.
yeah. So with that, do you think that you had certain aspirations for your child, whether it was you wanted him to develop certain skills or you wanted him to be able to use it as a path to somewhere, and that's what guided your child? Or did his evolution in the sport, was his, going from maybe more recreational competitive, what changed your, vision for him in fencing?
For us, for our family, because we don't come from a very wealthy family. I mean, I was a single mom for many years. For me, it was like paying for that registration fee for a tournament in another state where we had to like travel to this tournament. That was the jump off spot. That was like, okay, we need to take this seriously. This is not just for funsies anymore. You know, all of my extra cash or whatever was going to go into this, and I realized that really fast. So for us it was like, we're going to do this, we're going to do it really seriously because of this money I didn't have that I was going to put into fencing. But I never really had a dream like, oh, fencing is going to take us to the Olympics or fencing is going to take us to Columbia or Harvard. It was more like, we're doing this, so I want you to take this seriously because it's money that we don't have.
So like, the financial investment, then also the investment as a family. Like you said, you're at practice, you're with them during the
Yes,
tournament all the
time, money, all of that plays into at least why I kind of just stuck with this. It was like, it's a huge investment of your time and of your money. And so your child has to rise to that.
Yeah, and I guess you, because you're a parent of multiple children over a period of time, you continue to invest or have your children invest into fencing. So compared to your first child, who said, they saw Star Wars, it was very fun for them, they liked
Hmm.
the sport format. Why did you then have your latest children go in? What was, the change for you in terms of maybe what you think they could get out of fencing or what fencing could possibly offer them now that you have seen some of the trajectories that some fencing kids can go on?
Well, going back to mental health, I saw with Nolan in particular, as he started to go into his teen years, that fencing shielded him from a lot of the negative aspects of being a teenager or a typical American teenager. He didn't have time to go out and party. He didn't have time to just hang. He always had something to do and somewhere to be. And once I saw that, it was pretty easy to say, Lauren, this is what you're gonna do. and and it kind of helped my parenting to make it a little bit easier for me to be a parent because they got lost in this world of fencing, and fencing was safe and the people there are great, and they're talented parents themselves. There's doctors, there's lawyers, there's journalists. There's a lot of interesting people in fencing, and the kids are brainy and funny, and I, I couldn't imagine a more safer community for my kids.
I know community is one of the big parts that I like fencing and that I like having these
Hmm.
conversations because of community members like you as well who have so much knowledge and can provide that perspective to others. Similarly to what you were saying, maybe on the other side, my next question would be how you navigated balancing fencing and schooling
Mm.
and being a kid. Because even for you, if you understood with clarity the benefits of fencing and what it could provide if you're a kid in terms of an environment for growth and for connection, kids sometimes go through their own navigation of what they want for themselves and how they're connecting with their friends and their interests. So how did you navigate that? When did you start making decisions to exclude certain activities or to not engage your child in certain other activities that the fencing tab would take up? And maybe was there a balance struck over time, or was it just constantly something you needed to navigate with each child?
I think that I didn't really struggle with this as much because I think that the kids realized that this is so exciting, being able to travel to another state. This is so exciting, being able to get on a plane and go to, while my friends are just kind of stuck at home, and yeah, they're playing video games and they're like, they have all this free time. But what I'm doing is really exciting. And I think as a parent, though, you need to make sure that when you do travel with your kids, and this is something I did, we would go to do something fun in that city, wherever we were. And a lot of parents don't do that. They're like, go to your tournament's over, it's time to do homework. No, you really have to um, make it fun for your kids. And this is also the part where you're going to get a closer connection to your child, because wherever you go, wherever you are, you're going to make it fun for them. And sometimes parents make it a drag because we're like, we want to be on schedule for certain things, and you want to make sure that yes, they are doing their schoolwork, but make sure that you're also making it something fun for your kids, and that their childhood isn't like slipping by where they're just like spending the time in a convention center. So I think that's another reason why my kids wanted to stick with it. Like if we were in DC, we went to the museums. And yeah, they had to do homework, but it was like later in the evening, you know. But always try to make it fun for your kids. That's your responsibility as a parent, because otherwise, the time goes really fast. One day Nolan was 10, and the next thing I know, he's going away to college. And in those years, yes, he we went to a lot of tournaments. Yes, we went to Europe. He went to China. But I mean, I think if he talks about his experience, he'll say, "Yeah, but I did a lot of fun things when I was in Paris or when I was in Italy." It wasn't just, the convention center.
So you're kind of mentioning building in some of those other activities into the experience of fencing that they may miss out on as
Oh,
they're
you have to.
at practice or they're
You
away
have to.
every other weekend, every couple of weekends.
That should be a non-negotiable because you remember you're taking away parties that all their other, you're taking away hanging out with friends. You're taking away, just free choice basically. So you have to fill it for them. And I think the kids are healthier and they're happier. And that was the way I did it. And I think it's worked out well.
I would say so too, based on based on the
Yeah.
results. My next question really speaks to something I would say is your particular niche of information and knowledge. So the sport of fencing itself has grown tremendously over the past decades. 20 years ago, we introduced the first women's saber event into the Olympic Games, and now there's over 35,000 members of the community who are fencing from Y8 to Vet 70. So you, as someone who's raising youth fencers now and was raising them then 20 years ago, what is the biggest difference between how you approach supporting your fencers now versus when you first became a fencing parent? And similarly, how do you think the logistical parts of fencing, like the tournaments and things of that sort, has changed, but also how athletes have to engage with the sport now versus before? Does that does that make sense to you?
Well, fencing has grown tremendously. I mean, you go to a Y10 tournament and there's over 100 girls there. I mean, we just didn't have that. Um, so I think you need to be more present more than ever. That's what I'm saying. You need to be more present more than ever with your child because it is, it's stressful for a little one going to a tournament and seeing 100 girls there and there's only 8 medals. Um, and most likely you're gonna walk away without a medal. So you really have to, again, put in it, make it fun, and also be very present for your child at the club that they're fencing at. And also truly understand who your coach is as a person and what their beliefs are about fencing. Um, and also know what your long-term goals are. Because like I said, it quickly moves from funsies to like serious. So you
Like
have to know.
funsies to fund Z's.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to know what your goals are. And some people say, well, they just, and I never believe them. Oh, I'm just doing it because they like it, and you could do a lot of other things that are a lot less stressful. So ultimately, I believe more and more people are involved in fencing because they want to use this to get into college. And that's fine, but you really have to do your research on your coach and look at who they've put into colleges, if that's the case. Um, who actually is doing well with them, who has done well, and talk to those people. I think there's a lot of like exploding clubs, and it is a nice for the sport, but for a lot of parents, it can lead to disappointment, and that can affect you. That's something that I see now. I see a lot of frustration from students and parents because fencing has gotten so big, but fencing, the rules haven't changed and the tournament hasn't changed. So there's always going to be a set of people that are just way better than you. And in this country, in the USA, it's California, West Coast, East Coast, and then there's like a few dips in between. And I think a lot of people just join up on a club and they don't do the research. And at 15, 16, they start to get worried and they start to get anxious because they're not getting the results that they thought they would get.
Yeah, to dig a little bit deeper on what you were saying, like for example, when I was studying fencing, I was contemporary with your son. My first year of tournaments was like a Y10 tournament with seven fencers, and every tournament would be the
Right.
same seven fencers. And I won my first tournament a year later with under those circumstances. So I was able to achieve some sort of success, you might say early on. But now, like you said, there's 100 young girls in a tournament. Some of them may have been fencing for 4 years at age 10, and some only for 1 year. So, with what you're saying, keeping fencing fun and then also supporting your athlete, how do you think, you know, parents, or how have you better equipped yourself to support an athlete who's going from just having a couple fencers that they're competing against when they're 10 years old and trying to get better and see if they can beat this small group of people versus maybe having the same level of experience and the same level of rigor, maybe still being recreational, bordering on more competitive, but having such a wider field of competition and so much more pressure subsequently. Like, I guess maybe what has been your way to help your athletes then under those smaller circumstances versus now under these more intense and competitive circumstances with your
Well,
young
one thing
girls?
that has not changed is the level of commitment that you have to make to fencing. You cannot expect to compete by going to fencing less than 4 times a week. You really need to put in that time. And that's the minimum, I think, 4 times a week. For instance, Lauren, she used to have some outside classes, like fitness classes. And I think more and more you see parents adding in fitness classes. They might also see a sports psychologist. They might they might do massage therapy like for recovery. So it's very important to understand that fencing isn't just going to be taking them to the club and dropping them off and putting everything on the coach. You really have to be involved if you want to go the distance. And being involved might mean doing outside activities that add to the athlete's performance.
So now you've like increased your investment and effectively their investment into all the components of the sport, not only the
Oh,
training,
yes.
but then the outside training, the
Hmm.
recovery, all those things to be able to compete even in the youth ages.
Oh, even in the youth. And let's tie it in also with academics, because one of the thing about fencing is you're going to be traveling a lot. Fencing is a sport where you have to go to tournaments outside of your region for points for whatever reasons. And you definitely need to add in some academic courses. For instance, a lot of kids in fencing in are at the Fencers Club take Russian math. Some of them are doing writing classes. I don't know how we fit it all in, but that's the culture right now. It's a lot of stress. The culture is stressful for a parent because you really have to keep up with all this stuff. But I know moms that are doing it. We just really can't make excuses about it. If this is what you want, if this is the path you've chosen, you really have to do everything you can to get your child um, leveled out with all the other kids that are competing. Because like I said, it's not seven anymore. It's 700. You go to a tournament. It's a lot of kids. So you always need to stay one step ahead and like bump it up for your child.
I hear that because that's what it looks like to me. And I'm not even a youth fencer, but when I see the youth terrain, it's pretty intense. And I've done all the different levels, but the youth seems pretty daunting.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. This is not for everyone. Um, but yet there is a lot of people doing it and they're doing very well and they're very successful. Um, and I love the fencing community because of that. They always rise to hardship. Just when you think, oh my God, my life is so hard. I got to go do this and this with my kids. You talk to a fencing mom and you're going to look lazy. You're going to look lazy. So this is another reason why I love this community because it keeps me on my toes. And it's been 20 years and it's still exciting.
I think on that note, I have my last question for you. And it's more of like a reflection both on your relationship with yourself as it pertains to mental health and with your children. So the question is, what is the most valuable thing you learned about supporting your athletes' mental health and their mindset from your experience as a parent of multiple fencers? And also,
Mm.
what's the most valuable thing you learned about supporting your own mental health and mindset throughout this process? So, kind of a two-part question. How have you supported yourself as a parent of this, very engaged and committed sport, and how have you supported your athletes? Like, what's if you feel like the best thing you've learned or gained or understand now?
Well, how I support my mental health now is I talk to other fencing moms because really no one in my family can understand this, but the fencing moms do. So I talk to fencing moms who are on the same path as I am and doing the same things that I'm doing. And they really help me. You trade stories, that's what makes me feel better when I've had a really bad day. As for the kids, how to help them stay healthy mentally, that one it's harder than it seems because how do you tell a child that just lost, they've given it their all, that, hey, let's keep going. Let's not give up. That one is really hard. And all I can say is over the years, I've just told the kids, you got to take the losses to get the wins. And it's like that in every field, it's like that in every sport. Sometimes you have to take the losses to get the wins. And I think it may sound simple, but we have a lot of great examples in the fencing community of great fencers who go to far off places and they take losses and they're heartbreaking. And when you can show that to like a younger fencer, I think it helps them to see that it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to make mistakes. And you just have to move on and keep working hard because next time you're going to get them. And that's it.
I know I worked with your husband, Olympic coach, Sean McClain, and something that he told me, similarly to what you're saying, is you lose 90% of the time. You only win 10% of the time. And I think
Mhm.
having that perspective, instead of viewing every tournament as something that you either win and it's great, or you lose it and you're, a terrible fencer and nothing's been worth it, to kind of have that overarching perspective of pursuing that 10% and understanding that 90% of it is not going to be, victory and celebration.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your wisdom and your time and your inspiration. I loved what you said about how you help support your mental health by talking to members of your community. This is part of the reason why I have this event, is to hear from members of the community to help other people or to relate to other people and empower their experiences. So thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, Iman.